Good evening and Tashdele to our esteemed speakers, members of Indian Parliament, members of Tibetan Government in Exile, and our guests. Tashi Lhunpo Monastery and India-Tibet Coordination Office have jointly organized this event, the Panchen Lama Awareness Initiative held in India. We welcome you all. We would like to acknowledge our esteemed speakers, Honorable Shri Sujit Kumar, Honorable Shri R.K. Krime, Honorable Shri Jamyan Sri Namgyal, Honorable Sikyong Pembatsiring, and His Eminence Sikya Rinpoche, who, with their extremely busy schedules, have taken the time to participate in this very important initiative. Now I would like to formally start the program by inviting Shri Sujit Kumar, Honorable MP Rajya Sabha and convener, All-Party Indian Parliamentary Forum for Tibet, to address the gathering.
I have gone through your 6-point appeal for the Panchen Lama advocacy which you have given us, and have urged the Indian members of Parliament on behalf of the members of Parliament of India and as the convener of the All-Party Indian Parliamentary Forum on Tibet. I can only assure you that this appeal will not go in vain. I assure you that, individually and collectively as a member of the All India Parliamentary Forum on Tibet, and along with my esteemed colleagues Sushil ji and Namgyal ji and Anil ji, and there are many others who wanted to come here today, but Indian Parliament is in session and there are multiple demands. Even in fact the Lok Sabha still, I think, is still functioning, so many MPs couldn't join us today, but they will support this cause. And not only this, the way China has been systematically committing genocide in Tibet, in Xinjiang, needs to be exposed. Today, there is almost a decimation of the Tibetan identity. It's a crime to speak Tibetan in Tibet. Tibetans have become second-class, third-class citizens in their own soil. And it's a real tragedy what is going on in Tibet. Monks as old as 82 years old are immolating themselves. So the time has come that, and I keep saying this to my Tibetan friends, that the issue has to be kept alive. And I have always said that no empire has lasted forever, particularly no evil empire. Talk of the Roman Empire. There was a saying that all roads lead to Rome. There was a saying that the sun never sets in the British Empire. Where is the Roman Empire today? Where is the British Empire today? So I have the utmost conviction that the evil Chinese Empire, the CCP Empire, will also end someday, and Tibet will be a free country. And maybe you will not see that. Maybe your children will not see that. Maybe your grandchildren will not see that. But it will happen. It might take 100 years, it might take 150 years, I don't know. But it will happen someday. And the extremely rich Tibetan identity, culture, you are the custodian of the great Buddhist culture, which started, of course, in India. But today, it was His Holiness and you all who have kept it alive. So, please keep the issue alive. Use social media, use technology. I don't see that happening much. Please leverage the power of technology to tell your stories. Leverage the power of social media to give a narrative to the world of what's going on in Tibet. Tibet was never a part of China. Tell this to the world. And your appeal will not go in waste. So thank you very much.
Now I would like to invite Shri R.K. Krime, former MP and Minister and National Convener, Core Group for Tibetan Cause in India, to address the gathering.
This has been known to everyone that he has been by force been kidnapped and kept, and we do not know where he is. And we are all been talking about his whereabouts every time we celebrate. Now this is about 28 years old. As far as you have seen that, you see that I'm the national convener for the Core Group for Tibetan Cause. This I would just like to brief of, or a small briefing is like this, that you see, we have in our country about 21 major organizations, non-governmental organizations. these are all by Indians supporting Tibetan cause. So when we talked about their branches all over the world, all over the country, it is almost everywhere in every district is represented by either by one organization or by other organizations. So this was going on. This was in continuity of the, I'll tell you, continuity of the people of the India supporting the Tibetan cause. The first Tibet convention was held at Kolkata in 1959 on 30th of April in 1959 under the leadership of the then Jayaprakash Narayan, who has created an Indian history, a political upheaval in our country. He was the leader of that under his leadership. So after that, many organizations have come up supporting the Tibetan cause. And today also we are continuing that supporting the Tibetan cause. And this is, I'm talking about the Indian part of it. So therefore, when I say this is the national convener for the core group 4, this is the apex body because this was thought out during the time of the Kalon Tripa of His Eminence Samdong Rinpoche 2002. He has realized that there are many organizations working in our country, in India, supporting the Tibetan cause. But there is no coordinating body which oversees it, and also think tank which should also guide how to go about the Tibetan movement. So accordingly in 2002 it was been, this was thought out, and it was then formed the core group for Tibetan cause. It was now continuing from there. This is the apex body coordinating all these organizations in our country. So that is how we are. And then we have a small coordinating office which is called the Indo-Tibet Coordination Office in Delhi. So this is we continue to have the conferences, national conferences twice in a year, and then we make the programs and to how to go about. It's very correct, like Mr. Sujit Kumar has said. What is utmost requirement is to keep Tibetan cause alive, Tibetan issue alive, and for that reason we have to create more awareness. Not only we have to realize that His Holiness came in 1959 in India, and the people or the age group of His Holiness, those who have come, they are no more with us. Even the second generation is also not with us now today. So unless this continuity of the creating an awareness to the younger generation continues, even the Tibet issue will also be vanished one day. So therefore, our movement, what we are doing is that we want to keep alive about this Tibetan movement and all that. Now I have going through after this thing but I have a strong belief that Tibet one day will become the independent, and it will regain its independence. And after what had happened was that I'm just correcting one very important development taking place in our country. They say that even the Ram Janambhumi was fighting for last 500 years, and ultimately the Ram temple has come up in our country at Ayodhya. Similarly, I'm saying why it came up is that why the victory of the Ram Janambhumi is because they were fighting for the righteousness. Ek dharam and adharam. Ram Janambhumi movement they were for dharam, and other people opposing was also adharam. And Sachai and Jhut. Similarly, in the Buddhist, in this movement also, the dharam is led by His Holiness 14th Dalai Lama. And adharam is the Chinese. They are creating problem. They have by force occupied it. How long it will continue? So we say history tells us that adharam cannot take over the dharam. So dharam will always prevail and will succeed. So therefore, I have a feeling, I'm a strong commitment that Tibetan's independence cannot be stopped. It has to come. We have to continue to this also. So I will not take a very long time to this explain this because we are very lucky that today we have got honorable members of parliament, those who we would like to also share from this thing. But what I would also like to want to request them, taking them advantage here is that, you see, now His Holiness and CT has taken up the stand for the middle path. Middle path in the sense that which is a genuine autonomy within the framework of the PCCR's constitution, that is not Chinese constitutions. If that be so, why not the government of India takes the initiative at least to restart the dialogue with the Chinese government, with the representatives of His Holiness or the representative of the CTA. Unless dialogue takes place, there should be vigorously, I'll appeal to them that, unless dialogue takes place, nothing comes through. Because we do not know what they're thinking. And they also do not know what we are asking for. So if the dialogue takes place, the resumption of dialogue, so I'll request all of them that, we should all press the government of India, our government of India, that the government of India should take an initiative. Even in the world also, that dialogue should be resumed again. And that is the only way I find that, have to have a very amicable and respectable and peaceful solutions to the Tibet issue. That, of course, as this is their stand, but as far as we, supporting the Tibetan cause are concerned, you will hear that, that we are advocating for the complete independence of the Tibet. That is our part, because we are shouting, we are fighting for that. That is our part, because our slogan is that Tibet ka azadi, Bharat ka suraksha. And connecting to the Indian, the belief that's we call Astha, the mukti of manas, the Kailas Mansarovar. This is how we talked about, so that our Indian people also get connected with this movement, because it is directly connecting with their, the religion. Because the religious, that place of Kailas Mansarovar is in Tibet. So unless Tibet gets, the independence, our free movement is not there. And I'll tell you, we are still, I come from Arunachal Pradesh, which is bordering about more than 1,400 kilometers with China. And we still, people of Arunachal, we say that we do not say that it's Indo-China border, including our chief minister. We always say the Indo-Tibet border. We always claim that it was Indo-Tibet border because and before 1959, as per the records, if you see, there were only about 59 79, I think, 59. Paramilitary forces were bordering Indo-Tibet border. And today you can see how much was doing it. So therefore, we hope that with the great, our commitments and the fightings and our struggle will see one day a big, very successful light for Tibet. And as a national convener for the core group of Tibetan cause, which is supporting the Tibetan issue, Tibet issues in our country, I thank the honorable members of parliament and those who have graced today these occasions, and to give us to give us a few advices. And then we also request them that they should strongly voice in our Indian parliament that the Tibet issue has to be solved as early as possible.
Namgyal, Honorable MP Lok Sabha, to address the gathering.
एक इम्पोर्टेंट टॉपिक पे चर्चा करने के लिए हम सब यहाँ पे उपस्थित हुए हैं। पंचन लामा एडवोकेसी। मैं धन्यवाद देना चाहूँगा परम पूज्य कैब्जे ज़ैगर मुझे जी को। आपने काफ़ी सालों से दुनिया के हर कोने में जाके इस पंचेन लामा जी के साथ तिब्बत के इशू को, दुनिया को जागृति करने का जो काम आप संभाल रहे हैं, और हम सब आपके साथ हैं, क्योंकि हम समझते हैं कि तिब्बत का इशू एक ग्रुप का केवल एक पॉलिटिकल एजेंडा नहीं है। दुनिया में ह्यूमन राइट से लेके पूरे इंटरनेशनल कम्युनिटी के लिए, चाहे वो पीस के लिहाज से बात करें या विजडम के लिहाज से बात करें या किसी एक कौम के पहचान और अस्तित्व की बात करें, आज टिबेटन कल्चर, टिबेटन आइडेंटिटी दुनिया में जिंदा है, तो परम पावन दलाई लामा जी को इसका श्रेय जाता है। और हम सब आभार व्यक्त करते हैं परम पावन दलाई लामा जी को। पंचेन लामा जी के बारे में अगर मैं बोलूं, जो ये शब्द पंचेन है, हम लद्दाखी लोग इसको पंचेन बोलते हैं, टिबेटन स्पीकिंग थोड़ा पेंशन टाइप का बोलते हैं। ये दो शब्द जो जोड़ के किया है, पन जो है ये पंडित से आया है, यानी कि ग्रेट स्कॉलर, जो नालंदा परंपरा से शब्द डिराइव करके जो ग्रेट स्कॉलर को, ग्रेट पंडित को, यानी कि पंडिता को पंचेन का नाम दिया है, टाइटल। और इससे ये पता चलता है कि इसका गुरु, इसका माँ, इसका जन्मभूमि भारत है। और हम सब भारतीय का दायित्व बनता है कि हम सब आगे खड़ा हो इस इशू को लेके। हमेशा परम पावन दलाई लामा जी कहते हैं कि नालंदा परंपरा को जिंदा रखना है, माने भारत के उस विरासत को, जिस विरासत को हमारे ऋषि मुनियों ने, जिस विरासत को अशोका जैसे भारत के वीरों ने, जिस विरासत पे आज के भारतीय भी गर्व महसूस करता है, उस भारत के विरासत के जब चर्चा होते हैं तो यह नालंदा परंपरा से डिराइव होकर जब टिबेटन बुद्धिज्म आता है तो उसका एक महत्व पंचेन लामा जी है। और आज के टिबेटन बुद्धिज्म में कहे परम पावन दलाई लामा जी के बाद जो सबसे सीनियर मोस्ट थ्रोन होल्डर इन टिबेटन बुद्धिज्म इस पंचेन लामा। और हम सबका दुर्भाग्य यह है 1995 के 17 मई से जो एक रीइंकार्नेटेड वेल रिकॉग्नाइज्ड पंचेन लामा, when he was a very young child at the age of 6 साल की उम्र में, जो हम सब की आंखों के सामने से गायब कर देते हैं। और इसका जिम्मेवारी चीन गवर्नमेंट, और आज तक इसका कोई पता नहीं है कि उनका एग्जिस्टेंस क्या है, उनका वेलबींग क्या है। आज भी केवल तिब्बतन ही नहीं, पूरे दुनिया में, चाहे वो ह्यूमन राइट्स के बारे में बात करने वाले हों या हर समाज के लोग, ये मांग करते हैं चीन से कि पंचेन लामा जी, जो ओरिजिनल पंचेन लामा जी है, जिनको इन्होंने एब्डक्ट किया, जो किडनैप किया, उसको हम सब के सामने लाए। और शुरू में ओपनिंग रिमार्क्स में कह रहा था कि आज एक पपेट, एक डुप्लीकेट पंचेन लामा के नाम से जो तिब्बत में जो चल रहा है, दुनिया में किसी भी कम्युनिटी का कोई मान्यता नहीं है। आज हम सबको पंचेन लामा ओरिजिनल चाहिए। और ये केवल बौद्ध धर्म को मानने ना मानने की बात नहीं है, केवल रीइंकार्नेशन सिस्टम को मानने और ना मानने की बात नहीं है। ह्यूमन राइट ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस सभी लोगों ने ये बताया है कि ये दुनिया के यंगेस्ट पॉलिटिकल प्रिजनर है। और आज हम कैसे चुप बैठ सकते हैं कि एक 6 साल की उम्र के लड़के को जब किडनैप करता है और बहुत सारे दुनिया के लोगों को इसके बारे में अज्ञात है और जिसके पास जानकारी है वो भी चुप बैठे हैं, ये मैं समझता हूँ पूरे दुनिया के लिए दुर्भाग्य की बात है। और पंचन लामा जी और हिज होलिनेस परम पावन दलाई लामा जी दोनों को तिबेटन कम्युनिटी और तिबेटन बुद्धिज़्म को मानने वाले इनको सन और मुन का दर्जा देते हैं। और आज सन और मुन में से एक गायब है तो हम उसका कैसे अनुमान कर सकते हैं। और उसी के साथ साथ चाइनीज़ गवर्नमेंट ने 2007 में 3 अगस्त 2007 में और एक ऑर्डर लेके आया जिसके तहत उन्होंने एक डिग्री सेट किया, एक लिमिट लगा दिया। ऐसे जितने भी परम पावन, जितने भी परम पूज्य, जितने भी धर्म गुरु जो तिबेटन बुद्धिज़्म में जो रीइंकारनेट होने के बाद रिकॉग्नाइज करने का जो सिस्टम है वो चीन गवर्नमेंट को पूछे बगैर नहीं कर सकते, ऐसा चीन गवर्नमेंट का एक आदेश है। और हम बीइंग इंडियन सिटीजन, हम बौद्ध धर्म को मानने वाले लोग, हम परम पावन को मानने वाले लोग, हम पीस लवर लोग, इसका इसलिए हम ओपोज करते हैं, इसलिए हम ऑब्जेक्शन करते हैं क्योंकि ये चीन सरकार का एक इंटरनल अफेयर नहीं है। रीइंकारनेशन का सिस्टम जो है उस पर कोई अधिकार चीन सरकार का नहीं है। मैं आपको उदाहरण के लिए बता दूं, आज 14वीं दलाई लामा जी हम सबके साथ हैं। इससे पहले 6th परम पावन दलाई लामा जी सांयांग ग्यात्सो अरुणाचल में बोर्न हुआ था, किरमे जी आपके स्टेट में बोर्न हुआ था। तो अगला परम पावन दलाई लामा जी 15, 16, 17 कहाँ जन्म लेना है ये उनके मर्जी है, ये किसी सरकार के, किसी संगठन के, किसी व्यक्ति के मर्जी नहीं हो सकते। और उनके मर्जी को जो है चीन गवर्नमेंट कहते हैं कि आप रीइंकारनेशन को रिकॉग्नाइज करने से पहले आप सरकार पे फॉर्म भरो। ये तो मजाक हो गया दुनिया के सामने, ये कतई नहीं हो सकते। तिबेटन बुद्धिज्म माने केवल एक पॉलिटिकल एंटिटी स्टेट्स के बाद हम नहीं कर रहा है। भले तिबेट जो है एक रीजन का नाम हो सकता है, लेकिन जब तिबेटन बुद्धिज्म एंड तिबेटन कल्चर के जब हम बात करते हैं, आज पूरे दुनिया में फैला हुआ है। परम पावन दलाई लामा जी का रीइंकारनेशन लद्दाख में क्यों नहीं हो सकते, यूएसए में क्यों नहीं हो सकते, कहीं भी क्यों नहीं हो सकते हैं? तो क्या उस देश के सरकार क्या चीन से परमिशन लेने के लिए जाएंगे? इस मुद्दे पे भी मेरा यह मानना है कि भारत सरकार को इस मुद्दे पे भी बोलना चाहिए। हम मानते हैं क्योंकि आज परम पावन दलाई लामा जी, हम सबका सौभाग्य है, उनका बेस्ट एंड फेवरेट जगह जो है आज लद्दाख मानते हैं। ये लद्दाख वाले गर्व से कहते हैं। यहाँ पे ऑनरेबल सिक्यों जी भी बैठे थे। लास्ट ईयर हम देहरादून में मिले, मैंने सिक्योंला से एक मजाक में मैंने सच्चाई भी बता दिया कि आप देखना 15 दलाई लामा जी जो है लद्दाख में जन्मेंगे, क्योंकि ये केवल वातावरण ऐसा नहीं है कि उसका हवा अच्छा है, ज्योग्राफिकल जो है तिब्बत जैसा है, केवल वो नहीं है। जो लद्दाख वाले परम पावन दलाई लामा जी के प्रति श्रद्धा रखते हैं, फेथ रखते हैं, जो गुरु शिष्य का जो फेथ रखते हैं, उससे ये पता चलता है। कल को क्या गारंटी है कि गंगटोक में या देहरादून में या हिमाचल प्रदेश के आज लाहौल स्पीति में रीइंकारनेट नहीं होगा, तो क्या हम चीन से परमिशन लेते रहेंगे कि रीइंकारनेशन रिकॉग्नाइज करने के लिए? इसलिए इस ऑर्डर नंबर 7 को मैं स्पेसिफिक बता रहा हूं, हम इसको नहीं मानते हैं और दुनिया के कोई भी सरकार इसको मानने के लिए तैयार नहीं हो सकते हैं। पंचन लामा जी जिस तरह मैंने बताया कि वर्ल्ड यंगेस्ट प्रिजनर के नाम से आज जाने जाते हैं, ये हम सब के लिए दुर्भाग्य है। आज केवल भारत ही नहीं, पूरे देश के हर कोने से, पूरे दुनिया के हर कोने से ये आवाज़ आ रहा है कि चीन सरकार को कि परम पावन पंचन लामा जी को रिहा करें। हम इस फोटो को देख सकते हैं। जहाँ तक मेरे नॉलेज है, केवल ये फ़ोटो ही दुनिया में आज अवेलेबल है, जो पंचन लामा जी का जो लेटेस्ट फ़ोटो है। इसके बाद आज 28 साल हो रहा है इनको किडनैप किए हुए, और 28 साल में इनके वेल बींग्स क्या है, इनके एग्जिस्टेंस क्या है, किसी को कुछ नहीं पता। अलग अलग टाइम पे अलग अलग साल जो है चीन के सरकार ने बयान दिया है कि कभी कहते हैं कि इनके एजुकेशन हम टेकिंग केयर कर रहा है, कभी कहते हैं कि इनका जो पर्सनल लाइफ डिस्टर्बेंस नहीं होना चाह रहा है। भाई एक बच्चे को किडनैप किया, उसके बाद आप बोल रहे हैं कि इनके पर्सनल लाइफ को डिस्टर्ब नहीं कर रहा है, इनको दुनिया के सामने नहीं ला रहा है, फिर बता रहा है कि आप इनके एजुकेशन को टेकिंग केयर कर रहा है। इससे बड़ी हिपोक्रेसी दुनिया में कोई नहीं हो सकता है। मैं इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ मैं इस एडवोकेसी के मूवमेंट को पूरा समर्थन देता हूं, और भारत के संसद में एक भारतीय संसद होने के नाते, एक बौद्ध धर्म के अनुयायी होने के नाते, एक पंचन लामा और हिज होलिनेस दलाई लामा जी के शिष्य होने के नाते पूरे लद्दाख वासियों की ओर से हम ये मांग करते हैं कि भारत सरकार से कि भारत सरकार भी इस पे जो है बोलना शुरू करे, पंचन लामा जी के वेल बींग्स के बारे में पूछना शुरू करे, और हम पूरे भारतवासी गर्व से इसको समर्थन करते हैं, क्योंकि हम चाहते हैं, हम इनके खिलाफ है कि पंचन लामा जैसे ऐसे छोटे उम्र में जिसका किडनैप हो जाना, ये कोई दुनिया के कोई भी व्यक्ति जो है इसको स्वीकृति नहीं दे सकते हैं। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
Now I'd like to invite Shri Sushil Kumar Modi ji, Member of Parliament, to speak to the gathering.
किसी भी आंदोलन, संघर्ष या प्रयास के लिए सबसे पहली आवश्यकता है जागरूकता पैदा करना, क्योंकि लोगों को पता ही नहीं है। मेरे जैसे व्यक्ति को भी कोई जानकारी नहीं थी इसके पहले, इसके पूर्व। इसलिए जो अवेयरनेस है, जागरूकता है, ये सबसे महत्व की बात है। जब लोगों को जानकारी मिलेगी तो इस तरह के कॉज को बहुत बड़ा समर्थन जो है और मिलेगा। और देखिए, पूरी दुनिया में चाइनीज़ गवर्नमेंट के प्रति कोई सहानुभूति नहीं है, और एक प्रकार से चाइनीज़ गवर्नमेंट आइसोलेट होती जा रही है। अब तो धीरे धीरे उसकी आर्थिक स्थिति भी खराब होती जा रही है, और लोकतंत्र में तो उनको भरोसा ही नहीं है। वहाँ चुनाव होते हैं, लेकिन वो जो चुनाव होते हैं वो दिखाने के लिए चुनाव होते हैं। मुझे चाइना जाने का मौका मिला था करीब 15 साल पहले, तो वहाँ पर बड़ी संख्या में अलग अलग दलों के लोग बैठे हुए थे। तो हम लोग भी आश्चर्यचकित थे कि भाई चाइना के अंदर इतने दल के लोग कहाँ से आ गए। तो उसमें जो प्रेसिडेंट थे, मैं नाम भूल रहा हूँ, तो मंच पर बैठे एक एक आदमी का परिचय कराया गया, ये इस पार्टी के हैं, ये इस पार्टी के, इस पार्टी के हैं, और अंत में कहा गया कि ऑल दीज ऑपोजिशन पार्टीज आर सपोर्टिंग द रूलिंग पार्टी इन चाइना। तो फिर ऑपोजिशन का मतलब क्या है? और इसलिए 11वें पांचेन लामा को जिससे किडनैप किया गया 6 साल की उम्र में, एक पपेट लामा को वहाँ पर इंस्टॉल किया गया। लेकिन देखिए, किसी को इंस्टॉल कर देने से नहीं होता है, उसके पीछे जो है लोगों का विश्वास। इसलिए चाइना अगर किसी को पपेट को लामा घोषित भी कर देता है तो तिब्बती समाज उसको स्वीकार करने के लिए कभी तैयार नहीं होगा। मैं अपने आप को सौभाग्यशाली मानता हूँ कि परम पूजनीय दलाई लामा जी से मुझे कम से कम आधे दर्जन बार मिलने का मौका मिला। जब मैं बिहार में सरकार में था, उस समय बिहार के अंदर अनेक अवसरों पर उनका आगमन हुआ था, और काफ़ी समय उनके साथ व्यतीत करने का मौका मिला। और अभी भी मैं गया हुआ था 8-10 दिन पहले, तो मालूम पड़ा कि परम पूज्य दलाई लामा जी आने वाले हैं बौद्ध गया, और 15-20 दिन वहाँ पर वो रहने वाले हैं। तो मैं एक MP के नाते मैं इतना ही कहूँगा कि मैं पूरा सहयोग करूंगा। सुजी जिस मामले में हम लोग को लीड करने वाले हैं, इस पूरे विषय के जानकार भी हैं, और इसलिए लेकिन ये कि बाकी लोगों को जागरूक करना तो आवश्यक है ही, लेकिन जो तिब्बती समाज है उसका जो नया जनरेशन है उसको भी उस विषय की पूरी जानकारी होना बहुत आवश्यक है। तो इसलिए मित्रों, मैं पंचन लामा अवेयरनेस इनिशिएटिव के आयोजकों को अपनी ओर से धन्यवाद देता हूँ, बधाई देता हूँ कि आपने ये इनिशिएटिव यहाँ पर लिया है। अभी पटना भी एक ग्रुप आया था, मुझे पता नहीं इसी काम के लिए आया था या किसी और काम के लिए, लेकिन पटना भी एक ग्रुप आया हुआ था। तो मैं फिर से एक बार इस विश्वास प्रकट करता हुआ कि हर प्रकार की हम लोग मदद करेंगे। धन्यवाद।
Now I'd like to invite Shri Anil Hegiri, Member of Parliament, to speak to the gathering.
I've come here on behalf of my party Janata Dal United to express solidarity with the campaign for securing the release of the world's youngest prisoner, the 11th Panchen Lama. And I've read the 6-point appeal, and I have been always a supporter of the Tibetan cause, and जैसे मोदी जी बताए कि मुझे भी एक सौभाग्य मिला हिज होलीनेस से मिलने के लिए, इसी कारण से कि मैं जॉर्ज फर्नांडिस जो टिबेटन कॉज का बड़ा सपोर्टर रहा, और उनके कारण उनके साथ मैं उनको मिला भी हूँ। और मैं अब इस संदर्भ में मैं इतना ही बताना चाहता हूँ, मैं आप लोग तिब्बती लोगों को नहीं, नॉन तिब्बतियंस को खास करके मैं बोलना चाहता हूँ कि हम लोग ये जो आज जैसे मोदी जी भी बताए कि तिब्बत के चाइना के अंदर क्या हो रहा है, वहाँ पर डेमोक्रेसी नहीं है, ये सब वैसे we have enough information of whatever is happening inside Tibet. Today, there was a short duration discussion in the parliament, and on economic situation in the country. While during my speech, I referred to Tibet because of the human rights violation, the labor rights violation, and the persecution of prisoners like these Falun Dafa practitioners and the Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang, and all such people are in millions are in jail, and there is forced labor and there, and because of which they are able to manufacture cheap goods in inside China, and because of which our Indian manufacturing sector is also suffering. In this context, I made a mention. I also appeal to my non-Tibetan friends that we should not look this thing in isolation. There are in neighboring Burma, Aung San Suu Kyi's struggle. We should support Aung San Suu Kyi's struggle in Burma, Myanmar, and there are people like Abdullah Öcalan in Turkey prison for the last 24 years. This is organ trade. Harvest has become a big business inside China, where the organs of prisoners like these Uyghur Muslims and these Falun Dafa practitioners are being traded off. So all these issues are very serious issues, and we should, myself as personally, I believe that we should start a campaign to stop human rights violation, to stop environment law violation and labor rights violation inside China. this is today in the parliament also I made this point. So I also had got an opportunity to visit China a few years back. I assure you that we'll always be with you in your cause and in securing the release of Panchen Lama. Thank you.
Now I would like to invite Honorable Sikyong Pemba Sringla, the democratically elected political leader of the Tibetan government in exile, to address the gathering.
I want to thank the Tashi Monastery for organizing this event and the efforts being made by His Eminence Sikyong Rinpoche. He has been traveling around the world. I had the occasion to accompany him to the United States to meet with the State Department, with the US Congress, in the Canadian Parliament. We also had a hearing at the British Parliament, which is one of the largest committee on religious freedom of religious belief. And Rinpoche had also traveled to many other countries, creating awareness on Panchen Rinpoche. I want to thank honorable members of Parliament, Sujit Kumarji, convener, All-Party Indian Parliamentary Forum for Tibet, Sushil Modi ji. I had the occasion to meet him in Bihar last time when the institute was opened. And Chaman Binamgila, who has been very much involved on the Tibetan cause, because he comes from Ladakh. Culturally, we are all very close. Anil ji, I didn't recognize him because he had trimmed his beard from the last time we saw. And R.K. Krimeji, chairman of the core group for Tibetan cause, the honorable members of Tibetan Parliament, our friends from the Ladakh Hill Council, Gompa Association, and the media. I have been traveling around the world as the democratically elected leader of Tibet and the Tibetan people, telling the world that we are dying a slow death. We are being stricken, like being squeezed out of our breath by the dragon. Our culture that is very closely associated with India, our language, our script came from India. Buddhism came from India. And we are proud to be a repository of one part of ancient Indian wisdom. At one time, Tibet was a huge empire in Central Asia between 7th to 9th century. Our empire extended from the capital of China, Xi'an, to present-day Samarkand in Uzbekistan. Then Tibet disintegrated for about 400 years. During those periods from 10th to 13th century, before Buddhism disappeared from the land of its origin, we transliterated almost every available Sanskrit and Pali text into Tibetan. And we are proud to be a repository of one part of ancient Indian wisdom. And we are the only one who have the complete set of Buddhist teachings in this world. Tibetan script is one among the 15 oldest script in this world, language in this world. And akin to one language in Amazonia and another in Papua New Guinea, Tibet is the third language. When you use the language, you have to apply your mind. So it is of utmost importance for India as well to preserve one of its branches of wisdom that the Tibetans have preserved in its pristine quality over the last 1,300 years. Of course, there are a lot of things to talk about. We live under the illusion that we lived in India for the last 64 years, and the Indian people know about the Tibetan cause. But unfortunately, not so many, and more particularly about China. There is very little awareness on China. I know the concerned ministries and the departments are very well aware of China's designs and motivations in the region and internationally. But political leaders, elected members of parliament, have very little knowledge about Tibet, apart from those who are directly associated with us. Therefore, it's very important that we create more awareness on what China is doing, not only to Tibet, but also to the region, countries in the region, and internationally. So we have been traveling as much as possible. Last month I was in Brazil, in Colombia, Mexico, United States. This month I was in Canada, Spain, Austria, and France. And we have also visited many other countries to spread awareness about Tibet. Unfortunately, not many understand China as they should. That is why I keep telling them it's not just that I come here to seek support for Tibet, but it's for your own country's future. It's for your own people that you need to understand China. It's not enough just to have investment from China and be happy about it. There's nothing called free lunch with China. Everything has a design. China has a lot of strategy involved whenever they invest money in any part of the world. Unfortunately, despite the rhetorics from many countries, business is going up with China. And the only thing that can bring China down on its knees is economy. Right now, China is having a lot of problems on the economic front and also on the political front, even though the system is very opaque. There are a lot of things that we can talk about: the geostrategic importance of Tibet, the historical independent status of Tibet, and the role that Tibet plays as a political buffer between the two most populous nations in this world, India and China. Till China's occupation of Tibet in 1950, there was never ever a border between China and India. There was never ever a war between India and China. Only after China occupied Tibet, it became Indo-China border. But I take solace in the fact that the Indian government has not changed the name from Indo-Tibetan Border Force and Indo-Tibetan Border Police to Indo-China Border Police. And I would urge the media also to use the same that the Indian government uses, that underlines the thinking behind the Indian government's policies towards China. There are a lot of things that we can talk about in terms of the geostrategic importance of Tibet, its location, the size of Tibet. At one time, a Pakistani journalist asked me, which is bigger, Bhutan or Tibet? It's multiple times. Tibet is 10 times the size of UK, 18 times the size of Japan, about 60-70% of India's landmass, 25% of China's landmass. So the size of Tibet itself had played a role as a political buffer between the two most populous nations. And in future, if there is a negotiated solution with China, Tibet and Tibetans can play the role of a bridge between the two most populous nations in the world. We can also help in building trust between China and India. That is why His Holiness has adopted the middle way policy, a policy that's based on pragmatism, that's based on the reality of the situation, where Chinese and Tibetans can mutually benefit from each other. A negotiated, non-violent solution could be lasting, and that is what we are pushing for, despite the historical status of Tibet as an independent state. When I travel around the world, I also tell governments that if you keep repeating the statement just like a parrot, at the instance of the Chinese government, that Tibet is part of PRC, you're going against the international law. We have only one agreement with China. That's a 17-point agreement, the so-called 17-point agreement that was forced upon us after occupation of Chamdo. And under international law, that should be null and void. Whether it's happening to Ukraine today or whether it happened to Tibet more than 70 years ago, it's the same international law after the formation of United Nations. And we also tell governments that you keep repeating the statement that Tibet is part of PRC. But on the other hand, just maybe to appease His Holiness Dalai Lama or the Tibetans, countries also say we support negotiation between the representative of His Holiness Dalai Lama and the Tibetan and the Chinese leadership. But these two don't go together. If there is no recognition of the historical status of Tibet as an independent country, there is no liberation for middle way. There's no reason why China should come and talk to us. And when you keep repeating that statement, then you're removing the very ground for negotiations. And the third thing we tell the international community is that why is China asking other governments to say Tibet is part of PRC? not other regions like East Turkestan or Mongolia, because the Chinese government knows that they have no legitimacy of their rule over Tibet. That is why they are trying to seek that legitimacy from the international community. But unfortunately, the international community does not understand Tibet's history, but they keep parroting China's coercive means of accepting Tibet as part of China. And that is not fair. That is not justice for the Tibetan people. And there is also the environmental significance of Tibet. Tibetan rivers, the rivers that originate from Tibet flow into India and Pakistan in the form of Indus, which is the cradle of Indus Valley civilization, one of the oldest civilizations in this world. Yellow River originates from Tibet and flow into China, and Yellow River is the cradle of Chinese civilization. So rivers that originate from Tibet are homes to many civilizations, and some of them very old civilizations in this world. If it is not for Yellow and Yangtze, China would not be able to support its 1.4 billion people. Then you have the Mekong that flows from Tibet and into 5 different countries in Southeast Asia: Burma, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, and Vietnam. Then you also have Irrawaddy and Salween that flows into Burma. You have the Brahmaputra that originates from Western Tibet, comes to Eastern Tibet, takes a U-turn to come into India and into Bangladesh. And China is building a dam twice the size of Three Gorges, which is the biggest in the world, to generate 3 times the electricity that Three Gorges produces. And you can imagine how much land is going to be inundated upstream to store that much of water that will destroy so much flora and fauna that is very unique to Tibet. Last time I was in Arunachal Pradesh, and the Chief Minister Pema Khandula was very kind enough to send us a helicopter to travel by, and I was traveling from Meo to Tuting, and the whole route of that helicopter was over the Brahmaputra, and Brahmaputra was very murky. When you see from the helicopter, the tributaries that join the Brahmaputra were pristine clean, pristine clear, and that's how Brahmaputra should be coming from inside Tibet, but it's very murky. And when I asked the locals, they said it's not just happening in the last 2-3 months or last 1 year. It has been happening since 2018. And that is proof enough of what Chinese government is doing at Pemakwe, the Great Bend, where they are building this massive mega structure. And the whole Himalayan region, as scientists say, is still growing by 10 millimeters every year because of the tectonic shift between the Gondwanas and the Eurasian plate. In that case, the whole Himalayan region is also prone to earthquakes, to seismic. It's a huge seismic zone. If something happens to the size of that kind of a dam inside Tibet, what's going to happen to people in Arunachal Pradesh, in Assam, and in Bangladesh? They are going to be washed away. There's going to be serious human catastrophe and destruction of properties, which we cannot imagine at this stage. So it should be a major concern to the government of India and to the people of India to take care of Tibet's environment. Smaller rivers like Karnali flow into Nepal. So you're talking about Tibetan rivers that flow into 10 different countries in the region. And the countries that we are talking about are some of the most densely populated areas in this world. Some people say the Third World War could happen because of water. In that sense, Tibet is a huge biospot. You're talking about serious water security. You're talking about serious food security in the region, because China does not share any hydrological data with any of its downstream countries. But the downstream countries are not strong enough to rise up and tell that reality to the Chinese government, including India. I was here in Delhi as the director of Tibetan Parliamentary and Policy Research for 7.5 years between 2001 and 2007-08. And we organized the first water conference. There was very little awareness. Now we can see a little more awareness, but that is not enough. I think we have to rise up to the occasion and tell China for what they are doing to Tibetan rivers, to the Tibetan water, to Tibet's ecology and environment. And then also there is the Tibetan Buddhist culture. Now in this world, ridden with violence, the message of Buddha is more relevant than ever before. And we Tibetans have preserved that religion, and that message is manifested in the form of His Holiness teachings around the world as a messenger of India, of Indian wisdom. Of course, today we are here to talk about Panchen Rinpoche. The 10th Panchen Rinpoche has played a very pivotal role. As Namgyala mentioned, we consider the Dalai Lamas and Panchen Lamas as a star, the sun and the moon of the sky. His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama had to flee Tibet in 1959. His Holiness was in India in 1956-57. Panchen Rinpoche, the 10th Panchen Rinpoche, also accompanied His Holiness in 56-57, visited on pilgrimage to many Buddhist sites in India. And when His Holiness came to India as an exile, as a refugee, as a political refugee, Panchen Lama decided to stay back in Tibet. And he wrote a 70,000 character letter way back in 1962-63 to the Chinese leadership describing the bad situation that Tibet has turned into after China's occupation inside Tibet. And he was incarcerated. He was publicly denounced. He had to go through a lot of things, including incarceration for more than 10 years during the Cultural Revolution, when everything old was being destroyed in the whole of China and more so in Tibet, where 6,000 monasteries were destroyed. 1.2 million Tibetans directly or indirectly died because of China's occupation. And lately, from 2009 till today, or till about last year, 157 Tibetans have self-immolated. And when we travel around the world, people ask us, why don't we hear about Tibet anymore? But who is paying attention to nonviolence or nonviolent movements? There's too much focus on violence. Look at Israel, Hamas, look at Ukraine. And then it's more like we are promoting violence. People realize that only if you take up violence, the world pays attention. There is not enough attention on nonviolent movements. We've been decrying about this. And the world international community also look up to India as a leader. There's no political space inside Tibet. If you have read 1984 by George Orwell, it's more like George Orwell's 1984 has come into reality in the whole of China, and more so in Tibet, where the state surveils and controls everything. Now the government collects DNA samples of people, iris scanning of people, electronic identification, geolocation, and they track every single thing what the Tibetans are doing. And the system is so gridlocked that even if I think about self-immolation today, I have to think 100 times before I burn myself. I could die, I could get scarred for life, but then all my immediate relatives are going to suffer because of my action. And that's how gridlocked the system is. And that is how there is no space for political activities inside Tibet. And that is why you don't hear much about Tibet these days. In terms of religious freedom, the number of monks and nuns have come down drastically. We were talking about 7,700 monks, 5,500 monks, 3,300 monks in the huge monasteries that we have in Tibet, which we have been able to replicate in India with the leadership of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the religious leaders of all traditions. Now, the management of the monasteries and nuns have been taken over by the Chinese intelligence security forces and the United Foreign Work Department. The Chinese government, which is an atheist government, wants to be responsible for setting up curriculum for Buddhist studies. And they say with Chinese characteristics. Nobody understands what that is. Some people change the design of the monasteries to say it's a Chinese characteristics. So Chinese laws and regulations are so ambiguous that they can interpret it in any manner they want, depending on how they see the other person and the activities they're involved in. For monks and nuns to travel from one place to another, they need to take at least 4 or 5 different permits. Some of the monasteries that flourished in eastern Tibet in the last several decades, that has more than 10,000 monks, have been dismantled. The monks and nuns have been pushed away to their native places, demonked, derobed, made to marry. And the biggest monasteries that we have in Tibet today only about 400, 500 monks. And if new novice monks want to join monasteries within the limited number they allow, you need at least 4 other people to guarantee that this monk will not undertake any political activity. And if the monk takes up a political activity, then the 4 other people who guarantees for that monk ends up in jail. That is the level of suppression of religious freedom inside Tibet. And Chairman P. Namgyala also referred to Order Number 5 that was introduced in 2007 by the Chinese government, which says that the Chinese government will be responsible for recognition of reincarnated lamas, or what they call as living Buddhas. And they have been maintaining a list of the lamas that they have recognized. Now, coming back to Panchen Rinpoche, he has played a very important role in his previous life as the 10th Panchen Lama. After he was released from prison after the death of Mao Zedong, when Deng Xiaoping took up the responsibility in China, there was little space for freedom in the early 80s, when Hu Yaobang also sent his people to study the situation inside Tibet. And Panchen Rinpoche played a very, very important role in getting Tibetan language back on the Tibetan landscape, Tibetan religion back on the Tibetan landscape. But unfortunately, he died very young. In fact, we have every reason to believe that the former Panchen Rinpoche was assassinated. If we look at the telltale signs on his body, we could see a lot of signs of poisoning. He was doing very well. He was speaking upright about what is happening inside Tibet. And in a few days, he was no more with us. But there was no postmortem done. So there's no proof that he was assassinated. But I met people who attended to him, and they claimed that there were a lot of telltale signs that he was assassinated. And 6 years later, Chinese government formed a search committee led by Chade Rinpoche. And the search committee informed His Holiness the Dalai Lama about potential candidates. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama, through proper Buddhist rituals, selected Khendu Chögying Nyima, and now officially known as Chezun Tenzin Khendu Yishe Chilen Kuzo Pesangpo, in 1996. Soon after His Holiness recognized Khendu Chögying Nyima as the reincarnation of the 10th Panchen Lama, he was abducted by the Chinese government, along with his father, along with his family. Now nobody knows where he is. We don't even know whether he's alive or not. There has been a lot of representation from the international community, including the United Nations, about his whereabouts. And Jamila also referred to the response that came out from China, that he's studying, he doesn't want to be disturbed. And now we don't know, even if he's alive, whether he has been trained to take on the responsibilities that he's traditionally used to. And I said in the United States, in one of my talks there, I said China made a tactical mistake, but by not recognizing the same boy that His Holiness recognized. Because from the Chinese perspective, they think that the Panchen Lama has a role to play in the selection of the Dalai Lama, which need not necessarily be in that particular framework. But then, if they had kept the same Panchen Lama recognized by His Holiness, today it could be a tool in their hand. But instead, they selected their own Panchen Lama through a dubious means, through the golden urn, as they say, but it was manipulated. You can read that in another book by Ajahn Rinpoche, who was a witness to the process of the selection by the Chinese government. And today, Chinese selected Panchen Lama is just another leader for the Tibetans inside Tibet. He's not recognized as a Panchen Lama by Tibetans inside Tibet. You have no access to Tibet except for those journalists and diplomats that are invited by China from friendly nations. But then if you do have access, you will realize that the Tibetans inside Tibet, to show their displeasure, do not sell pictures of Chinese selected Panchen Lama on the streets of Lhasa. They can't sell the pictures of the 11th Panchen Lama recognized by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So they sell only the pictures of the 10th Panchen Lama. And Chinese government, instead of keeping their own Panchen Lama with a traditional seat in Tashi, Lhunpo, they kept him in Beijing. And they periodically sent him to Tibet just to show the world that there is respect from the Tibetan community for the Chinese Panchen Lama. And this year, May, again, he went from Kham to Lhasa, or Shigase. But they had to pay money to receive the Panchen Lama, 200 yuan to receive the Panchen Lama. And they pay money to listen to Panchen Lama, just to show that the Tibetans respect Panchen Lama. They tried to send him to Thailand. They did send him to Hong Kong on visits, but very low-key visits. There were also news about the Chinese government wanting to send Chinese Panchen Lama to Nepal. We did find out. We did inform the right authorities at that time, and the planned visit could not happen. Now, what else they could do? Maybe they sent him to Mongolia, where Mongolians don't respect him. So that is why the abduction of Panchen Lama is directly related with the reincarnation of the 15th Dalai Lama. China is not concerned about the living 14th. They are more concerned about the yet to come 15th Dalai Lama, because they know that if they can control the 15th Dalai Lama, they can control the people of Tibet. But my message to the Chinese government is, have you not learned enough lesson from the Panchen Lama saga, where the Tibetans don't recognize the Chinese selected Panchen Lama? It'll be the same with His Holiness. In the latest white paper that Chinese came out, China said that we will look for Dalai Lama's reincarnation in Tibet. Now, how do they know that the Dalai Lama will be born in Tibet? The 4th Dalai Lama was born in Mongolia, and Angela also referred to the 6th Dalai Lama being born in Tawang. So there have been 2 Dalai Lamas who were born outside Tibet. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the 14th Dalai Lama, has been very, very categorical in his statements that he will be born only in a free world. So if Tibet is not free at the time of such an eventuality, then His Holiness will not be born in Tibet. So search for His Holiness inside Tibet would be a futile exercise. So I also tell the Chinese government, do you need a lifelong headache or not? Because if you have 2 Dalai Lamas, it's going to be a lifelong problem. His Holiness keeps assuring us that he will live for another 2 decades or more. His Holiness keeps assuring us that he will live up to 113 years of age. And there were propitious pre-signs that this Dalai Lama would live very long. And we believe in His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And I personally believe that this message is more for the Chinese leadership, because the Chinese leadership is waiting for this Dalai Lama to die. And their calculation is that he will not live more than 96. So under such circumstances, they want to interfere in the process of the selection. It's His Holiness who's going to be reborn. And this reincarnation is very unique to Tibetan Buddhism. There are many Buddhist countries in this world, but it's not there in other countries. So the one who is going to be reborn has the right to decide where he or she will be born. And it's His Holiness and His Holiness alone who will be deciding about the process and where he will be born. And His Holiness has been also very categorical since 1969 that whether there should be a 15th Dalai Lama or not will be decided by the Tibetan people. But now, the followers of His Holiness extends beyond Tibet to the Indian Himalayas, in Bhutan and in Nepal, to Mongolia, to the Russian republics of Kalmykia, Buryat and Tuva. Now you have so many disciples coming from across Buddhist countries in East Asia and Southeast Asia, from Japan to South Korea to Vietnam to Thailand, Laos, Singapore, and many countries. And His Holiness disciples now even extend to the Western countries. So the only one document that concerns His Holiness reincarnation is the September 2011 document, wherein His Holiness says that he will consult and take some decisions when he reaches the age of 90. And this July 6th, we celebrated His Holiness' 88th birth anniversary. And it's another 1.5 years down the line. Some governments tell me, oh, you don't seem to have a process in place, or His Holiness have not decided about his reincarnation. It could be an emanation, it could be a reincarnation. Sometimes His Holiness says that this could be a last Dalai Lama. When asked, His Holiness also said it could be a female Dalai Lama. And when I travel around the world, some people ask me, you don't seem to have a process in place. I said, that's your perspective. But our friends in India who understand China and the Tibetans think that the decision taken by His Holiness the Dalai Lama right now is very wise, because China cannot handle unpredictability. I was in Thailand once reading local newspaper because they were not able to predict what Trump is going to do. So they go to oracles to decide, to ask the oracles what President Trump is going to do. You know, if His Holiness decides now as to what exactly or when exactly all these things will happen, China has all the mechanisms, both financial and human resources, to spread their propaganda around the world. And that is why when His Holiness does not decide, they don't know what to do. You know, because some final words has to come from His Holiness. And we pray that the Panchen Lama is alive and Chinese government come out clearly with this message as to where he is and what he is doing. Our people deserve to know how opaque can Chinese government be in these matters. And particularly in India, we know we are very shy of talking about China. But one thing that, having lived with China for so many centuries, one thing that we know is unless you stand up for your values and for your positions, China will never ever respect you. Europeans tell me, oh, the dragon is biting at us. Then I tell them, who fed the dragon to make it so powerful to be able to bite at you? It's Americans, it's Europe, it's Japan, including Taiwan, that made China what it is today. For Americans, I tell them, you don't have to read too many books. Henry Kissinger died very recently. You just read one book, Kissinger on China. It will tell you when China was about to fall, US was the one to support China to exist in the manner they existed today. Now, knowing that China is biting at you, if you still want to feed the dragon, whose fault is it? So you have the EU-China summit coming up the next few days. The whole focus is on the economy. They need European market, they need Southeast Asian market, but on the other hand, politically they align with all the rogues, all the gundas in this world. Yeah, so China is playing this dual game because of its belligerence on the Indian border, bellicosity towards Taiwan, and hegemonic ambitions in the region, including South China Sea. They keep these hotspots burning. And when there's a real threat to the survival of the Communist Party, then they will take some action. That is how I understand the situation. Otherwise, nothing grows on the land that they are fighting at, on the LOC, in Ladakh. We were there. Our friends are here from Ladakh. They know how the landscape looks like, the salami slicing of India. But that is more. And they are pushing India towards the West and with the free world. And we are very happy that today India has taken a more stronger position that unless there's disengagement from all sectors, there won't be normalization of relationships. So that is how it should be, because China has been trying to contain India for too long with its all-weather friendship with Pakistan. Very flowery language, higher than the skies, deeper than the ocean, sweeter than the honey relationship with Pakistan. And it's all aimed towards containing India. So I thank again Sigib Rinpoche for his leadership as the abbot of Lhunpo Monastery, as the traditional seat of the Panchen Lamas, traveling around the world, telling the world about, finding out about what happened to Panchen Lama. We deserve to know. This is a very simple information that the Chinese government need to divulge. They cannot keep it hiding for that long. So thank you very much for your attention and for your time, and I'm very glad to be part of this discourse. And we'll keep pushing for Panchen Lama's release along with all other political prisoners that are being incarcerated for Tibet just because they are a little more popular than others. If you are, whether you are an environmental activist or a language activist or a religious leader, or when you gain little fame in Tibet, then it's a threat to the Communist Party. Yeah, so that should stop. We hope that better sense will prevail on the leaders of China. I also jokingly tell countries that if you have good brain surgeons, we'll bring the Chinese leader one by one, do brain surgery on them, put some common sense in them and send them back to China. Because we have addressed their main concern, sovereignty. But unfortunately, they are still not being realistic. And I think the Indians also need to understand China better. It's not like old times. There has to be more awareness on what China is doing and its motivations around the world. Only then can we be more vigilant. Only then can we be able to take more pragmatic policies in regards to China. I've been asking the Europeans, we need more transatlantic cooperation when it comes to China. Please don't look at us as victims of communism, Chinese communism. If you want to bring about positive change in China, we are the internal forces. You need both internal forces and external forces. Tibetans are the internal forces. Uyghurs are the internal forces. The Mongols are, so also the Hong Kongers and Taiwanese in that sense. So if we have to bring about positive change in China, please look at us as partners, not just victims. Then we can also play a positive role in framing your China strategy and Indo-China policy. Thank you very much.
Now I would like to invite His Eminence Sika Rinpoche, Abbot of Tashi Lhunpo Monastery, to address the gathering.
Nye diring tensa Tashi Lhunpo kempo mingdo ne zamli na pekyo nangden la tesem shugen da romi topdang da chede rangmyo ki topdang chebe rangwang topdang sola tsikuru shugen da labar pyo da Himalaya zowar chebe Kunsi Panchen Rinpoche teba shugen ki chedamba kyewo saya mangbo dang Gyagar Yu Xiong da Trezo Tumi Yong la Kunsi Panchen Rinpoche Kunchen Chukjiba Chenpo Choki Nedanggur Zadra Ki Ridun Kaji Nyensan Shugyu Yin Nye Nyuyu Ni Shugyu Pyo Nangi Nedang Nire Shi Hajang Tabdu da Zadra Cheru Choshinba Dang Labar Pyo Nangi Pyumi Zor Chwami Topdang da Chede Ramyo Ki Topdang Pyo Nang Gyana Xiong da Samzu Midunbe Pyumi Zor Kangjung du Zinsu Zunju Chene Kasong Chame du Zhuyi Yob So Yi Nedun Chapchen Ha Shinkar Nedang Che Zadra Shindu Zhoshinyu Tiring Deri Nye Pyo Mimangi Teba Shuyu Ki Lachin Shik Kasong Chame du Gyube Kor Yi Nedun de Chene Pyo Dun Shudu Jagyu Yin Tenyang Chilo Chidong Gupye Gechu Gyagu Lor Pyo Chun Shika Zere Pyo Ki Lachin Panchen Kunten Chuba Chumbo Chok Lubur Du Toshi Chumbo Gongpa Zoba Tang Chidong Gupye Gupye Gonga Dawa Ngabe Tse Nishu Shi Ni Gongsa Kyamge Chumbo Chok Ne Kangi Tensa Tashi Lhunpo Dang Pyo Mimangi Ngwende Shin Pyo Najul Hari Zongdo Chungbe Kiwo Gendu Chuk Nima Chok Ngasoi Gyawa Yepse Namni Penzun Yangse Ngunzin Shure So Lalob Ki Tewe Kongten Lu Yuto Chojo Ki Lusoi Shizar Shaze Kunsi Panchen Rinpoche Kunten Chube Yangse Du Chume Ngunzin Seda Nang Yu Yuan Gyang Yin Sum Che De Chidong Gupju Gupju Gonga Chinda Ngabe Tse Chubdun Yin Gyana Shungi Gonglo Chule Masumbe Panchen Kunten Chukjiba Gendu Chue Nima Choda Kongi Yabyung Kukor De Cheba Zenti Je De Darbar Milo Nishu Zabye Ri Kasong Chame Chayu Di Sabdu Kunten Chukjiba Shenshik Chela Gwe Tu Tatang Koba Tsu Chapsiki Lakchar Peche Tang Da Tang Shin Yu Kunsi Panchen Kunten Chuba Chimbu Chogi Pyo Ki Chue Da Rikshung Tola Pyo Nangdo Yidu Chidun So Zede Kule Tseme Kyomba Dang Tar Kuzoye Di Chedu Lo Dang Zeyu Panchen Kunten Chukjiba Chimbu Chone Panchen Kunten Chube Gongshi Lapchen Drupa Mangda Shi Yuebe Tone Yang Hajangi Kene Chimbu Shi Cha Yue La Tabar Kunsi Panchen Rinpoche Nedun Tola Pezhen Nang Yang Longo Nye Yerin Gangdo Yueme So Bangda Kongze Tenpa Shik Chik Yang Chung Medab Tatung Ngale La Tiring Gyagar Shungi Neye Minam Namne Pezhen Nang Ro Shugyu Yin Tere Ten Ngan Tsu Semtab Shimpe Kone Gyagar Gegab Ki Chozo Dang Seshung La Redun Tunzen Chuk Chen Shi Shugyu Yin Tunzen Tangbo Gyagar Wu Shungi Chozo Tumi Yong La Chilo Chidong Gupju Kuchu Gonga Chindang Ngabe Tse Chubdun Yine Kasong Chame Du Gyube Daja 공로 숨주 소실을 쓰면 군시 벤체를 뭐지 군대 주지부 지주 땡지기도 이시트는 분조 배서 무초기 내당다 구수 최대소 토 야나도 예배 shum섭 속이 내주 팀딩기 세도 용 비규슈기 니바 야가를 최소 투밀 행계네 군시 벤체 군대 주지부 전부 초라 공로 주내체 다바를 밀루 니슈 잡게리 조미 톱당다 최대 라면 집에 톱당소 도나 야마슝기 전워도绝对조선도 시제 조미 톱당 자원의 매매 의식이 생다 의식 năng源요 비규슈기 숨바 야가를 최소 투밀 행계네 군시 벤체 군대 주부침 초 가송 참여 임바당 디토 투자위협의 통원기 작담당 디딩 투민남기 천다 거버시 용어 쉬교 시바 야나슝기 도주진기 시주 공사경부 침초 유 비교 낭den기 라중은진 야나랑네 문진 체규 리시 대다 배기 상기 담바당 배도 왕규를 체규 중에 참조 거바당 라버 군시 벤진 군디 주지부 침부 초당 공기 낭미 가르기 세세 급의 최저 팀제 땜배 용의 비교시교이 나바 군시 벤진 림부체 초당 양시 추시 초조기 소주 갑지 90 차제를 뭐지 초당最后的 예배 비민남 체도 lö저 거바당 배낭 자자게 내당고 랑류 메세 병게 장갸당 업중 앞게당 하버링 예체 랑류 메세 병게 랑롱 니슈장을 쓰면 90 상황 누블라당 90 자변라 제네 배전네 별라 장된다 갑교를 용고be 세든 쉬여be 저소 투매용네 내버도 배전나로 쉬교이 초바 야가를 슝기 저소 투매 행계네 치세 낭세토 공사경부 전부 초기 공시리여be 님의 우매람다 공사초 용능유도 별라 칩교능규토 갑교낭로 쉬교이 타된 다벌 야가를 슝조네 배된도 갑교를 슝체 낭다 낭심벌 투제지 쉬교당 마세 공도 년년생 쉬베 튼세남 대대교우 사야망부 샘감다 제베 먼저 톱당 제베 리든 임베 야가를 슝조네 배낭기 우에게 자자 강의 셋업소 갑교 나외 슈체와 낭규 말라 이체 템보여 투지체 첼로 니동 니슈 자숨 친다 중립에 생만이나스
Now this concludes our formal program, and on behalf of Tashi Lhunpo Monastery and India Tibet Coordination Office, we would like to thank all our speakers, members of parliaments, guests, and the media for attending today's event.